Now this clock, I've raided my Burr Elm supply, and we've got the last few bits. 2 pieces, 5.5 inch diameter roughly, to produce the base and the lid. 4 what amounts to pen blank size, 3/4 by 5 inch. I have a 2 inch clock insert which will be inserted into this disc. Obviously that disc will need to be supported, a couple of pieces to make the supports with, and then a small piece for the finial, which I'm not quite sure what design I'm going to do yet. Better not be too fragile as it could be posted overseas. The whole clock, I've actually got roughly a design in my head. There's nothing on paper. I'll just do it as we go. So we'll just see what materialises as I go. These blanks are not very round, so first thing I'm going to do is find the centres. Base is going to have my maker's disc in it, so I'm going to fill the size of the disc. And I'll use this recess to turn it in the jaws of my chuck. I load the blank into the jaws of the chuck. I'm going to just true it up first. I'm using a negative rake scraper here. I won't go all the way across or it'll break out at the end, so I'll just trim the final bit with the edge of the scraper. This is very dry Burr elm, so face off a little bit on the front. Mark the centre, this will be for drilling later. Now I'm just basically roughing out a shape that I've got in my head. I use the width of the tool there to mark 1 inch, knowing that my uprights are 3/4, so it will give me plenty of flat space. Basically roughing out what I want, put a little bit of shape in. This is actually a spindle gouge, not a bowl gouge. Like I said, I've got in my head roughly what I want. There's a centre line for positioning the drill points. I'll just go back and sharpen up these points here. Again, I think the little spots that need cleaning up here. I know this is an unusual way to use the scraper, but I find it quite efficient. So now we'll do a bit of sanding. Sanding is important to try and not take the sharp, crisp edges off. So I've edited a little bit of the sanding there, just a final touch up here. Now I think I'll rub it with the shavings just to buff the surface. This is going to be waxed. It does aid to finishing. Now we go on to the uprights. When you're turning thin spindles in Elm Burr, they are quite fragile, so I have to take much lighter cuts than I would normally take. Otherwise, put too much pressure on, you can actually break the spindle. This is the second one of the 4. I just turned the first one off my head and made a small storyboard from the original. So once I've marked the shoulders with the dividers and turned the pegs, I offer up the storyboard. Just small nicks on it so I know I can mark the positions accurately. And then we go on to basically turning the shape I did on the previous one. After doing as much as I can without changing the tool with the skew, I move on to this small spindle gouge to do the finer details of the coves, etc., the neck of the vase. Making sure I keep all the edges sharp as possible. Most burr timbers are tricky to get very clean, but this piece isn't too bad, and I'll finish off the vase shape with the skew. The tops are drilled to accept the screw chuck. There's a slight chamfer on the edge to stop it splitting. Quite an easy way of loading timber onto a chuck. It's quite an uneven piece. Again, true it up with the negative rake scraper. Again, don't go all the way across, just finish the last bit with the cutting edge on the edge of my scraper. So I very roughly reduce the face. Again, I mark the centre. This will be drilled for the finial. Now I'm just making it up as I go. So after doing most of the rough work with the scraper, getting a rough shape, move on to the gouge for refining the shape. As I mentioned before, I've got a rough idea in my head what I want it to look like. It's just a matter of eyeing it up now and then and having a think. Not quite sure what size I require, so I'm offering up the base just so I can judge how it'll look to get the correct diameter. So we now move on to the sanding. I don't suppose you want to see all that, so if I just edit it out, buff it with the shavings. Just drill the hole in the top. This is to accept the finial. The underside of the lid has to have a guideline exactly the same as the base, so the uprights will be true. We now know that's the same size as the base. Bottom needed a slight bit of cleaning up, so I'll just run the scraper over it. Then sanding. Again, you don't want to see too much sanding, so I'll edit a little bit of that out. Moving on to the centre boss, which accepts the clock insert. Again, drilled to accept the screw chuck. So I'll just drill up the face slightly. Again with the negative rake scraper. The particular insert I've got fits perfectly into a 50mm hole, so using the drill in the tailstock we can drill it quite easily. Yeah, helps if I get the correct speed. Using these bits, you don't want it too fast, you don't want it too slow. Turn the speed back up. I know exactly what I want. I can cut straight across truing this up because it's going to be cleaned out the back, off the back, so it didn't matter if it breaks out. Again, a bit of shape with the gouge. Obviously we've got most of the sizes we need because the drill sets the size required. I want a small flat on the top there, and then I'll just radius down. This will be cleaned up at a later stage. A small flat on the top is to exit the drill. Now if I offer the clock insert up, you can see the metal bezel sits proud. I want this to sit slightly inside. So I make that small recess. As I'm doing all this by guesswork, I need to offer the clock up again. Right, that fits lovely, just would like it slightly deeper. Again, I'll edit the sanding out. Nobody wants to watch sanding, so just a token gesture of the sandpaper. I've made a simple jam chuck out of a piece of scrap material, so I can turn the back. Never quite sure what I want to do with these, whether I want a full radius, a bit of shape, a bit of pattern. I can never make my mind up with these, but I remove the hole. Very much in two minds what to do. So I've edited out a little bit of hesitancy, and I'll also edit out some of the sanding. As you can see, I've left this small hole. Sometimes the wood can shrink and you can't pull the clock off, so that hole here enables you to push a rod in. As I mentioned, I put the recess on the inside here. When you look at the clock, I don't like the thickness of the metal and it stands proud, so with this reduction, when you put the insert in, it looks flush. A much nicer looking finish. And then the hole in the back, as I mentioned, you just push a small rod up the back to remove the clock for replacing the battery. Having marked the points I want to drill, on the outside of the disc. This time the drill bit is in the headstock. I use the tailstock to keep it true. No need for a depth stop here. I can just see the point of the drill break through on the inside, and that's when I stop drilling. We now move on to the finial. Again, I really don't know what I'm going to do on this one. I'm sort of making it up as I go. So I cut back the shoulder so it fits flush on the surface. Peeling cut puts more pressure on than many cuts. So you'll notice I'm doing this with a rocking motion to reduce the stress, because Elm Burr is very fragile and it could easily just break as I'm doing it. Now we need to make the two pieces that support the clock in the centre. These are just going to be a very simple shape. So turn down to a required diameter, which I need to gauge. If it's too big, it won't fit on the base. Turn the small peg. This fits into the wooden disc that we drilled previously. And mark the shoulder size. If you measure the diameter of the disc turned and take it away from the shoulder length of the uprights, you'll know the difference, the distance required. Just halve the difference and it gives you the shoulder sizes on these two pieces. Again, you'll be very careful with the peeling of this peg. It's a bit thicker here. This fits the hole in the base and or the top, whichever way round I put them. Again, cut back the shoulder so it sits flush. So we move on to the assembly. This takes longer than you imagine, so I'll speed up the video. Thank